Welcome back into Double A Baseball. Adam Oppenheim alongside Alex Hynes. It has been a long time, but we're finally back to break down everything going on across the landscape of Major League Baseball. Alex, let's jump right into it. Biggest news in the MLB over the past couple of weeks is Rafael Devers getting traded to the San Francisco Giants for Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, James Tibbs III, a first round pick for the Giants last year. Your initial thoughts?
Well, it's not great to be a first rounder out of Florida State this past year. James Tibbs the third, the Florida State man, gets traded after just 2 months, basically within the organization in this new season. Cam Jones was right in front of him, and he also is gone in that Tucker deal. But I mean, it was pretty obvious that the relationship was sour from almost the beginning, really, with Breslow and Devers. I mean, it was pretty well known that Devers was not his extension. That big money he was given for a guy that mean, he's kind of a DH, expected to be at least, maybe a first baseman. But, I think my initial thoughts were that basically something was going to have to give. It was either going to be Devers was going to have to really kind of own up to things and like accept his role in Boston, or the front office was going to make a move because really, as a player, you're not going to get enough leverage to really do too much in that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I think it really shows more about the person that Devers was because everyone knows he's a terrific hitter. Not been a great fielder. That's been very obvious across the years in his time in the Red Sox organization. But it kind of shows how little they actually cared about having Devers around in the clubhouse because they gave him away for not a lot. And that's the huge problem Red Sox fans have is sure you trade Devers, but the trade deadline is a long time away still. It's in mid to late July, and you trade him for Kyle Harrison, who's a good pitcher, young pitcher, but his fastball's been the only pitch that has worked this year. Jordan Hicks, who has not been good this year, is probably going to be a bullpen arm most likely. James Tibbs III might be the most interesting part of the deal. Some may say, a first round pick from last year. But once again, you're giving up a really, really good hitter and Rafael Devers, who contributed a ton to their offense. And the other main problem is it doesn't really fix the logjam in the outfield. So one of those young guys is probably going to be gone near the trade deadline.
Yeah, I do think one of the problems, though, I think, is that you can't. It's sort of a weird deal in the sense that you're trading a guy who, as a DH, does not have that kind of value. The bat has the value, but a DH is kind of a hard position to finagle a trade with, value wise. And the fact that the Giants are eating basically all, or actually they are eating every single part of
Right,
that
that's part of the
contract.
deal.
So
Yep.
it was going to be it was going to be a bit hard to try and get something, an astronomical return for Devers. I think the bigger issue is less the return they actually got and more just the message it sends to the fans. Because I'm not sure you really were going to get a ton more. Sure, if I'm Boston, I would love to have gotten a little bit more than,
I mean,
a
they wanted
solid
Bryce
really
Eldridge, but
pitcher that
that's
could be.
their number one prospect, right?
You're
So,
not going to get that. You're,
right.
you're just not. Um, I do agree, though, with your one point, actually, just to go back to it about the trade deadline still being over a month away. I think, obviously, the whole situation, he's not willing to play first for where Costas is out for the year. Obviously, he's not going to play third with Bregman there. So there was that issue. But I think as a team, it's not been the greatest of starts to your season, but like you've got young guys. You've got Roman Anthony coming up. You've already had, other guys debut. I know Christian Campbell got demoted, but at the same time, he's supposed to be a big part of the future. You're supposed to be getting those guys to build around a star that's already there. And so to make this trade now, before you really actually get to see all the parts you have, gives it a sign that this was not even a trade that was remotely regarding to the team performance. It was
Nope.
all due to the relationship. Unless they were going to be 10 games ahead of the division, I think this trade was going to be made anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you hear a lot of the rumblings about what was going on in spring training and Rafael Devers not really replying to text. John Henry, the owner, has been under a lot of heat um, for not being able to spend money. But then once again, you got Crochet, you got Bregman, you got Aroldis Chapman, who might be the best closer in the AL.
That
So
was your statement. Your statement was to bring those guys in. You're saying you're going to compete this year, but also Crochet's a guy locked up. you're going to compete for years to come, and you're just trading your franchise piece, the last remnant of the World Series team in 18, and saying, "Oh, well, sorry guys, we're going to give away one of the best pure hitters, at least in the American League, and not get a return that's going to help us now. Maybe it'll help you later. I don't argue with that, but if you're trying to compete now, where's the payoff?"
Yeah, you certainly want the bat of Rafi Devers. So that was the biggest story in the league, and that's been going on for the last week plus. Just a lot of surprise from the MLB fans, but I think to the Red Sox organization, like you mentioned, this was a plan they had for a while, unless they were just absolutely on fire, and they weren't. They were hovering around a 500 baseball team all year.
And I think the last thing I'll say on this, the irony out of all of it, is that he's going to a Giants team that has so many of the same issues as Boston.
Yeah.
So he's trading the same situation for the fact that he's got Buster Posey as his president of baseball ops instead of Craig Breslow. That's basically the only trade that's happening for Rafael Devers because you're never playing third over Matt Chapman. I hate
Right.
to break it to you, you're
Got them
trading
both.
one Gold Glove caliber guy for another even better Gold Glove caliber guy. First base is, I mean, it's a spot in San Francisco, but Wilmer Flores has been
Wilmer
hitting the
Flores.
cover off the baseball.
Yeah.
And so what are you going to do? Oh man, I think Rafael Devers may have to DH. Wait, wasn't that the whole problem in the first place?
Yeah.
It's weird, but I mean, there's little about this that makes sense while understanding why it happened, if that makes any sense to say.
Yeah, I mean, MLB fans are still trying to wrap their heads around it. Probably some other, upper management of MLB teams are like, wow, can't believe that just happened.
Right.
Pretty wild move. But there's been other stuff going on around the league. What other stories have you found really interesting through, almost the midway point of the season?
I'm gonna go close to home with the Cubs. I'm not the fact that the Cubs are leading the division. I think, it was an open enough division that they could be leading it. I'm talking about Pico Armstrong. I mean, it's not the fact, and it's again not the fact that PCA is performing at this high level, because again, the anticipation was he was going to be that caliber player. He was drafted high by the Mets. He was a big trade piece for Javier Baez in that deadline deal trade, and he was the number one guy for the Cubs when he was in their system. It's the fact that he went from immediately being, hey, here's Gold Glove man out in center field who can't hit a fastball but is going to provide the most electric defense you can see in center field, has turned into a guy that is just mashing the cover off the baseball and providing that gold glove defense up the middle in center field. And so I've just been impressed with how he's developed so quickly. It feels like he has taken a one season jump that usually is a progressional jump for guys over the course of 1 or 2 years. He's doing it instantaneously. And so will it hold? I sure hope so, again, as a Cubs fan. But I think it'll be interesting to see, as long as he continues to hit the ball the way he has, he's stealing bases at a crazy level as well for a Cubs franchise that really hasn't had that same kind of stolen base threat in a long time. See what happens by the end of the year. He's in MVP talks at this point, and I don't think anyone was expecting him to be anywhere near receiving votes, let alone the top of that conversation where he's at right now.
Love that shout, PCA. Obviously, has really been capturing the MLB world because everyone knew he had that spectacular glove, but the power already to have 20 plus home runs, it has been impressive. I want to talk about the NL East, and it looked like this division was going to be a runaway early on with the Mets. And Juan Soto was struggling, and the Mets were winning games. And now Juan Soto is heating up big time, and the Mets now win their last 10, 2-8, Phillies 8-2. They just played a series as well. That was a wild one. But the team I want to focus on is the Atlanta Braves. Just really disappointing year. Talk about injury to Spencer Strider, and now Chris Sale's injured, had a rib injury after diving after a ball off the mound. That's the most Chris Sale injury there is, really. And he's going to be out, a month and a half probably. And a team that looked like they've been the driver's seat of this division a couple years ago is suddenly going to be passed by two teams really easily. And talk about a Braves team that just lost a series to the Marlins. Lost 2 out of 3 of the Marlins over the weekend. That is not a good sign for Atlanta. Their hitters have not been the same Olsen and Riley have not produced at the same clip. Acuna's been great, but once again, he just came back from injury. So he didn't even start out the season with the team.
And not to mention, I think the whole question coming into the season, if the offense was going to struggle, sure, whatever. You've got the names, you've got the talent that you know can recover. Because there are plenty of guys that scuffled over the last couple of years, but they still ended up being a great ball club. The pitching deal was you lost Max Fried and you didn't get anybody else. Um, and it really felt like their rotation depth tanked when you already knew that the Strider injury risk was high. Chris Sale's injury history is, again, not very flattering as much as he's coming off of a Cy Young season. You know those two guys would be great when they're pitching, but the health was going to be the question. And again, some freak injuries happen, but it just didn't really feel like the depth was really where you want it to be because again, you're talking about a guy like Grant Holmes he's been good, solid actually, but he's a guy who's getting action pretty heavily. Spencer Schwellenbach has been good, and that's been a great sign for a guy that they were expecting to be good. But then you're seeing, Bryce Elder, Smith Shawver, guys that you don't want to be putting that much pressure on at this stage when you're trying to be a competitive team. And again, they're already double digit games back right now of the Phillies and both the Mets as well.
Right.
It's an uphill battle. That's going to take a lot, and I'm just not sure that even by the deadline they're going to be at a point where they can say, "Yeah, we're a trade to a starter away from making a push." I'm just not sure that's going to happen.
Yeah, and that brings me to another team in the NL that I'm looking at. And no, it's not the Colorado Rockies. I mean,
Really?
they've been awful. I feel like no one expected them to be this bad at 18 and 60 right now when we're recording it. But the Arizona Diamondbacks, they're in a really tough spot because they have pieces they could sell off. But once again, you're behind the Padres, the Giants, and the Dodgers. And as they say in the MLB, you can get to the World Series, but you might not be able to make it back. And now both 2023 competitors, the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers, they could very well both miss the playoffs.
Well, it really felt as though the Rangers were a bit better suited, I think, to sustaining things. The D-backs looked like they would have been a flash in the pan, and it's kind of proved to be the case. I mean, I know last year Corbin Carroll struggled until the very end when he, completely lit it up and really kind of salvaged the look of his season. But you thought that bringing in Corbin Burns, that was the statement to say we are going to sustain our success. This is their, you know, big kind of signing like they would have done, when they were trying to win the World Series back in '01. This was the big pitcher signing to really take them over the edge. And I think, we're starting to see that some of the guys that were good at the very beginning of the year are starting to slow down a little bit. Obviously, you're going to get great production out of Ketel Marte. But like
But he was
next up
injured
in
early in the
right.
season, so
And next up in B War on this team is Eugenio Suarez. Again, Suarez is he's been a great power hitter. He always has been. But we're again we're talking guys that you want to be at the top of your offensive production at your overall WAR production. If Eugenio Suarez is sitting number two, it's so hard for you to compete when you know you've got Corbin Carroll. You know you've got other guys. You bring in Josh Naylor.
right.
And you really want to get more out of your pitching staff as well. They're not a team that's really felt deep enough pitching wise. Same idea to the Braves, except without some of that young talent that we expected to see. They had Brandon Pfaadt get called up, but since then they really haven't had anybody stick.
Yeah, it's been really tough. Any other stories you're looking around the league? I have one more, and we're going to mention him later in the show as well. But Cal Raleigh,
Oh
un
yeah.
unbelievable hitter, and he catches too. So it's crazy as splits too. I think I saw by Foolish Baseball splits when he's catching as opposed to deep.
Yes.
Like, what is that? And
Hey, he wants catcher's gear on, man.
he does. He's a dog. He's an absolute dog. All
And,
right, let's
and
let's move.
actually, can I finish up one thought about
Yep,
that?
go ahead.
I was just doing a little bit. I was doing a broadcast a few days ago, and I do this day in baseball history. And it was actually yesterday, I think it was, that in 1994, on June 22nd, Ken Griffey Jr. hit his 31st homer of the season, which was the most before July 1st since Babe Ruth. And now, obviously, I'm sure there have been some changes in between. I don't know if
Yeah,
there's anyone in the meantime. probably Judge in that
Judge, I would have
62
to
homer
say.
season. Bonds almost certainly did. But the idea that from Babe Ruth to Ken Griffey Jr. in the 90s,
Nope.
no one else had done that, gone to 31.
Dead ball
And
era.
now, now Cal Raleigh, current Mariner, is doing it as a catcher. I think we're seeing such a crazy evolution of the game overall. And I just thought that was really kind of interesting factoid.
No kidding. That is a super interesting fact. But here's something that got a lot of baseball fans disappointed. A lot of people, especially baseball fans, have been following the College World Series, and LSU won the championship series yesterday. They won game two over Coastal Carolina, but manager for Coastal Carolina, their first base coach, both got ejected in the first inning. And breaking it down after the game, it was after telling the ump he was bad, and he said, because you missed three, and then he got tossed. There's also been a problem in the MLB with the replay system. So I'm going to combine this into a question. Is there a problem with umps both collegiately in that situation and across the major leagues?
I do think there's an interesting thing with there's being kind of two separate entities. I actually was talking about this yesterday with a couple of people who kind of know the ins and outs of college baseball over at Indiana State. And so with college, because of the way they bring in their officiating crews, there is a bit more authority of the NCAA to make a change. Now, obviously, you'd really like to think that that home plate umpire shouldn't have been there if that's the kind of temperament he's going to show in the biggest game of the year. But as opposed to the umpire union that allowed the likes of Joe West and Angel Hernandez to be employed for decades on decades, it's a bit of a different deal with how you can opt to make change. But I guess to your general point about Coastal Carolina, I do want to talk about that one because that is such a lack of feel for the biggest game
No
of
kidding.
of the college season, period. And so I know there is some blame that can go on the Coastal coach because apparently he was warned and arguing balls and strikes is a no-no. But again, you in the biggest game, you want your coaches to be able to have impact. And while I don't think, again, it would have changed the series result, I think LSU is probably going to win it. You got to have feel. I know you can't argue balls and strikes, but like, you've got to understand the moment and say, all right, how can I de-escalate in a way that's going to show my authority as an umpire without saying, hey, I'm going to make this game about me. And so I think we've seen that a little bit in college officiating overall, not just in the College World Series, but it's been a general trend in recent years, I think.
Yeah, I really don't like that at all, especially in the college game. I mean, you can see how managers get ejected. I don't think that's one of those where, oh, you got to get ejected and obviously it doesn't always matter the circumstance, but it being a championship game and nothing should have offended the umpire crew there. And then the umpire falling down and like him holding up two for like you're gone for the second game as well, or the third game if they were to play. Like that makes no sense. It's just really bad. I'm going to talk about the MLB replay system a little bit because this has also been a discussion, and it's New York really just missing calls because they're the ones who are relaying it down to the umpires. I just don't get how you're going to challenge the call and replay gets it wrong. It doesn't make any sense. You have all the angles. It doesn't matter so much in the regular season when it's just one game out of 160 plus. But when you get into the postseason, there needs to be some consistency, whether it's if the ruling on the field stands is called, then, oh, there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it. But then it's like, how are you deciding when to overturn something? If you have multiple camera angles that can match up exactly when, oh, like a hand hits a bag or it slides across the plate, use all those angles because when it comes to the postseason, those calls are going to matter a lot.
And that's why I've been saying about this at all levels, whether it could be college, it could be the pro, whatever you want it to be. We need more transparency. We need to be able to hear what the conversations are between New York and the umpires. Make it available not just to the TV audience, but to the audience, in the stands. Have it available so that again, everyone on the broadcast, all the media that are attending the game, from our perspective as media people,
Yeah.
um, know what's going on so we can communicate it, and so it can be communicated in a way that people understand what the call is and why they made the call. Because yeah, there are plenty of calls that they get wrong, but at least if we heard why they are getting to a call that we don't think is the right one, we can then understand and then say, oh, well, this is an umpire problem for this call. This is a available angles problem for this call, or simply we don't know. We, something we can nail it down to. And I think that's kind of the problem is we don't really get any transparency. And that's been something that I've always used the rugby example, where rugby officials are mic'd up the entire time and you can hear them around the stadium. You can hear every call, you can hear every conversation between them and players to say, okay, this is what's going wrong, this is what needs to change, whatnot, stuff like that. And just to have that kind of transparency, I think is important.
And right now there is none of that. Besides
None.
the umps
None.
adding a mic over the past couple years, there's not
The
been.
ruling on the field is out. They
Yeah.
retain their challenge. Mike off.
Yep.
Okay, I know what this means. I know that's out. That
I
doesn't
know what
really
this
change anything.
means. Yep. That's about it. All right. So the umpires, that's gonna be a discussion forever. I'm interested to see if there's some call in the postseason, which I'm sure there will be, that the challenge thing is gonna come into play. So, moving on to one of our last things before the new segment we created, let's talk about some players who we think could be on the move. I will just start. We already talked about this guy a little bit earlier. Jaron Duran and the Red Sox outfield with Wilyer Abreu coming back from IL. You have Cedar Rafaela, who's been a better hitter than Jaron Duran this year, believe it or not. And then you have Roman Anthony and you have Rob Refsnyder as well to fill in wherever. Jaron Duran's the odd one out to get traded, and I think it's extremely likely that Jaron Duran will be gone.
I'm going to move to the pitching side because I think that's a very fair point. For the pitching side, I'm looking at a team that's struggling that probably shouldn't have been, or at least you'd be hoping that they wouldn't based on how they've been trending. I'm going to go Pablo Lopez of the Twins. Twins are sitting around 500 in a division that now that had the best team in baseball in the Tigers, the team that is looking like they're going to run away with that division. The Royals look better than them right now. I just don't know if the Twins are really going to make the playoffs, at which point Pablo Lopez is probably their biggest real trade bait. Given that his contract is short, you're going to still hold on to the guys like Buxton, Correa. Those contracts are not getting moved. So the pitching late in by the trade deadline is the exact spot where you're going to want to be making a move if you're a contending team. And there's not very much good quality pitching this year. And I think Pablo Lopez is a guy that teams are going to look to. I think he was kind of rumored last in the offseason even. So I think he's a guy that's kind of always been on people's radars, depending on how the Twins have been doing, and they haven't been doing very well.
I'm gonna stick with pitching. I'm gonna go to Sandy Alcantara, who won the Cy Young in 2022. Has really not been good this year at all. You look at his ERA last year; he didn't have a good year either, but 4.14. I think it's closer than what he has right now at 6.69 earned run average. Obviously, doesn't get a lot of run support because he pitches for the Marlins. But he's been better the past few starts, and I think some contender could take him as a number three for the postseason. Is able to give you depth and throws a lot of strikes for the most part. That's been one thing about Sandy Alcantara he's not done well at this year is the walks. It's been a really high number.
Well, and that's where I'm curious about Sandy is because he hasn't necessarily shown that since that 2022 Cy Young season.
He got injured too, so
Is he
last year.
is he that guy still? Can he be that guy still?
Well,
And so I think
I'd argue to say that there's a lot of people who are not that guy who pitch in the postseason. So
right. I'm just thinking that it's going to be, you need the right trade situation. And I don't know what the Marlins are going to value him at. Are they going to value him at former Cy Young Award winner or a guy that's going to be a game 3 starter for a postseason team? And so obviously you want to make sure you're not giving up too much. I think he may be more of a reach pick for a team that's a bit more, that doesn't want to give up too much.
yeah, I think another one is Josh Naylor. I think that's a big one. First baseman with power, Diamondbacks, like we mentioned. We're not sure if they're going to decide to buy or sell. I'm leaning that they would sell more, and I think Naylor's a guy that a lot of teams would like. Just a power hitting first baseman who's solid defensively.
Yeah, I think that one's interesting, especially given that they just got him, but it is just the 1 year deal. So,
Right. You're, but the team who's buying is also getting a rental. So like,
right.
how much are you going to give up for that? I know people point to the Red Sox getting him. I don't think that makes sense, to be honest, because uh,
Unless you're
are
in
they,
contention.
they're fringe. They're a fringe contending team. If you're fringe midway through the season, I don't think you're buying a rental guy like that. It doesn't make sense.
It's not what you would expect. At least that's not what you'd be hoping for. Whether or not that's what happens, we'll see. But yeah, certainly if you're a fringe team, you're wanting a guy with some more control or at least a bit more certainty.
Well, Alex, I think it's time to move to our new segment. You're going to kick it off. What do you got? And we're going to explain it before we go.
Yes. Well, obviously, we've used a little bit of the play on our names for the show title. Well, we've
And
done it with our last names now here for our new segment, which is called Oh No. It's our worst of the week, the three top bad moments that happened in baseball over the course of the week. Let's start with number three. The Red Sox have already been in the news because of Rafael Devers, but now it's been announced that they have been using AI to try and conduct front office interviews. Not one round, not two round of interviews, 5 rounds of interviews have all been done by AI, and they've not done very well to disguise that they kind of don't seem to care. So that's a bit of a nasty look when you're already selling guys. Number two, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, 8 pitches, 8 strikes. The ninth pitch, right there, four, ball one. It was by far a strike by a country mile and left Joe Davis saying, "Can we rent the ABS system from AAA?" It wasn't very good. Number one, going to the College World Series, Arkansas guys. Your curse of Omaha is just continuing, and you're not helping yourselves out. They had a chance to win an elimination game, survive against LSU. They pass up a game-ending double play. A diving catch attempt ends up kicking off the left fielder's shoulder to tie the ball game up, and then you pitch to Bear Jones, the big prolific power bat, in a walk-off situation, and you throw sliders away, leave one up, slaps a single up the middle, ball game. The Hogs are done. And that's how they lost and how LSU made it to the championship series. They had 3 chances. That's 3 0 nos in one, in my opinion. So that's why they take the top spot.
as we call it, the Arkansas disaster class. Yeah, that was absolutely brutal play. That oh no segment stands for obviously Oppenheim and Hynes. But
Yeah.
those are three quality ones, Mr. Alex Hynes.
Thank you. Thank you.
But like you mentioned, Alex, you had the worst plays of the week. Now we got the best plays of the week. AA plus best plays of the week obviously stands for Alex, and I'm Adam. So at number three, Nick Kurtz, 2 walk-off home runs in 1 week. The rookie drafted in 2024 out of Wake Forest has been dynamite for the Athletics this year. The A's are kind of fun. They got some young talent. Now going over to number two, we already mentioned this guy earlier, Cal Raleigh, 31 home runs on the year and the most for a catcher before the All-Star break. Keep in mind, the Mariners got 6 more series left. And the most home runs also for a switch hitter before the break. Great series against the Cubs. 4 home runs in a 3-game set on the north side. And lastly, at number one, Gage Wood, elimination game no-hitter.
The 1-2. Swing and a miss! Greatness from Gage! A no-hitter!
The third no-hitter in College World Series history as he took down Murray State. The other two no-hitters, 1960 and 1950. And in that no-hitter, allowed one hit by pitch. That came in the eighth. 19 strikeouts and 0 walks. Those were my top three AA plus plays of the week.
19 strikeouts is quite good, I'm told, Adam.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
19.
love the post-game interview, though.
Yeah,
What are you thinking right now? I shouldn't have hit that one guy.
yeah. Hey, and that call in the ninth would have been huge if you were watching that game. A batter got hit in the ninth, and they overturned the call, saying he moved into the pitch. That has been another controversial call in college baseball. So that is gonna wrap it up here on Double A Baseball. We hope you enjoyed our new segments, Oh No, and AA Plus, along with all the other stories we recapped around the league, including the Rafael Devers trade. So for my partner, Alex Hynes, I'm Adam Oppenheim. We'll see you next time on Double A Baseball.